Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode here on Dangerous African Confessions HD. In this episode, we have a story from one of our dear mothers in the Lord. She tells us about her encounter with a pastor and his group who promised her of fame and power if only she will accept the devil's offer and surrender her soul. This is another story of spiritual manipulation, control, and trickery of powerful spiritual leaders in the Christian faith. Let us now go into what our mother has for us today. Please subscribe if you haven't done so, and also do like and share this video, so others out there can also benefit from this conversation. Hit the notification bell as well, so you will be notified anytime we upload videos.
My name is Angela, and for years, I've carried this weight, a burden so heavy it threatened to crush me. But today, I choose to let it go. What I will open up to you today, or you're about to hear, isn't just my story, it's a warning, a plea to guard your soul. I wasn't born into wealth or privilege. My mother was a seamstress, and my father worked long hours as a factory hand. They taught me the value of hard work and the power of prayer. Growing up, the church was my safe haven, a sanctuary from the struggles of life. I felt God's call early on, a soft yet unmistakable voice urging me to serve. When I became a pastor, my ministry was small but vibrant. We met in a modest hall with peeling paint and squeaky chairs, yet our hearts were full. We didn't have much, but we had faith. That faith sustained us when the bills piled up and the congregation dwindled. As you all may have been in such situations before. You see, as time went on, doubt began to creep in. I questioned if I had misunderstood my calling. If this really was where God wanted me to be. That's when they came into my life, the ones I now know were wolves in sheep's clothing. It started with an invitation to a conference for emerging leaders in faith. It was an unexpected email. The subject line read something like, an invitation to elevate your ministry. So, when I saw that, I was curious about the sender's name that really caught my eye. A renowned pastor whose ministry was a beacon of success. His church had a lot of members, a sprawling campus, and a media presence. The email read like, Pastor Angela, your dedication to God's work has not gone unnoticed. We'd like to invite you to a private leadership conference designed for pastors with extraordinary potential. My heart skipped a beat. I had heard about him, and attending his conference felt like stepping into a dream. You see, the event was held in a luxurious 5-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the scent of fresh roses filled the air. I felt out of place in my modest dress, surrounded by men and women in designer suits and glittering jewelry. The sessions were impressive at first glance. Leaders from some of the largest ministries shared strategies for church growth. They talked about marketing campaigns, social media influence, and innovative ways to reach younger audiences. These pastors had the kind of success I dreamed of, packed pews, financial stability, and influence that extended beyond the pulpit. I scribbled notes feverishly, eager to implement these ideas. Example is when one of the pastors during a breakout session gave us some strategies and advice. He said that the church is a battlefield, and not all battles are won with prayers alone. Sometimes, you need to use strategy. He began to share stories of pastors who had turned their struggling ministries into empires. At first, his advice seemed practical, rebranding, engaging with influencers, and creating emotional connections with the congregation. He revealed that people don't just want a sermon, but rather, they want an experience. Give them a reason to come back every Sunday. Make your services unforgettable. The conference, I will say, lasted for about a week. And during conferences like this, you will have the opportunity to make new friends and acquaintances. And just like anybody else, I also had people who were in ministry years ahead of me. Some of them were people of influence and those that commanded respect in the ministry. So, for weeks and months, we talked, and sometimes I will visit some of them in their churches during some of their evening programs when I am not having service. I came to realize that there were groups in this pastoral ministry. And they are willing to mostly come to your aid if you belong to their group. And so, with this in mind, I decided to be a part of them so that maybe I can learn one or two from them. They welcomed me warmly, their smiles as polished as their designer suits. They spoke of strategies to grow a ministry, ways to attract the youth, and how to ensure financial prosperity. It wasn't until months later that I saw the cracks beneath their glossy veneer. One of the pastors, a man I call Reverend Michael, took a special interest in me. He invited me to private gatherings, exclusive meetings held in opulent homes where the air smelled of incense and power. At first, the discussions were harmless. But then one of them said something that made me pause mid-sentence. He said that you have to identify your audience's deepest desires and meet them, whether it's hope, healing, or even ambition. And if that means bending the rules a little, so be it. God understands. I also remember I was invited to another smaller dinner together with some top people together with Reverend Michael. This dinner was also held in an opulent mansion. The dining room was filled with laughter and the clink of crystal glasses. But there was something unsettling about the atmosphere, an undercurrent of tension beneath the surface charm. Midway through the meal, Reverend Michael addressed me directly. He said that I have done well with what little I have. But imagine what I could do with more. Imagine a congregation 10 times the size of my current one, resources to build schools, hospitals, and media networks. His words were intoxicating. I wanted to believe him. So, I asked him what the secret was. He said with a smile, "The secret is understanding how power works. Influence isn't just given, it's taken. And to take it, you need to align yourself with forces greater than yourself." One evening, after our meeting, Reverend Michael approached me. He told me that I have potential. With the right connections, I could build a ministry that touches millions. But first, I need to understand the source of true power. He showed me a ledger filled with names, pastors, gospel singers, some politicians, and celebrities, all tied to this network. Each name represented someone who had pledged loyalty to something far darker than God. I was horrified, yet intrigued. Could it be true that so many had traded their souls for success? Reverend Michael handed me an ornate box and instructed me to open it in the privacy of my home. My brother, inside was a contract, a list of promises that seemed too good to be true: wealth, fame, a global ministry, and the fulfillment of my deepest desires. But there was a price. My loyalty. And I must tell you that God in His wisdom has a way of talking to His children. That night, I had a vision, a terrifying encounter with a figure cloaked in shadow. Its voice was both seductive and commanding, offering me everything I had ever wanted if I would simply say yes. But there was this sense of torture that radiated from behind that figure. For days, I wrestled with my thoughts. The promises dangled before me like forbidden fruit. I was tired of struggling, tired of praying for miracles that never came. But then, something strange happened. One of my church members, a single mother with nothing to her name, came to me for prayer. She sobbed as she spoke of her struggles, yet her faith remained unshaken. The person who had come for prayers then told me after everything that God will provide, despite her tears. Her words pierced my heart. I realized I had been looking at my ministry all wrong. It wasn't about fame or numbers, it was about serving, no matter how small the flock. And the truth is that even after what I knew was a communication for me from God through the woman, I still continued my association with them, thinking I was going to know a lot about their secrets. A week later, Reverend Michael invited me to a smaller, more exclusive meeting. He promised me that I would get to know everything there is for me to know. And that it was going to change my life. The gathering was held in a dimly lit room adorned with heavy drapes and a massive circular table. Around it sat men and women. Some I recognized from television and church programs, famous pastors, authors, and speakers. The meeting began with a prayer, but it wasn't like any prayer I'd ever heard. They invoked names that weren't gods, speaking in strange tongues and lighting candles that filled the room with an eerie glow. At first, I thought it was some kind of elaborate metaphor. But then, the tone grew darker. They spoke of securing influence and sacrificing small things for greater rewards. When I hesitated, one of the women leaned over and whispered, "It's not what it seems. This is how the real world works. You can't fight the devil if you don't know his ways." I wanted to leave, but curiosity rooted me to my seat. Reverend Michael began outlining their method for ministry growth. He said that some prefer to use manipulations where they craft sermons that stir guilt or euphoria, ensuring members feel dependent on the church for emotional release. He said that others too use fabricated miracles to captivate audience, and some also target the wealthy, where they focus outreach on influential community members who can bankroll projects. He continued that the church is a business, and so like any business, you have to play the game to win. When I expressed concern, Reverend Michael's demeanor shifted. His voice became low, almost hypnotic. He said that God gave me a gift, and I shouldn't let false humility hold me back. All we are doing is using the tools he provided. One of the women told me that if I can recall the book that was given me, almost all the top pastors in the country were almost part, that she said should tell me something. She said that it detailed their network, pastors, politicians, and business leaders who had aligned themselves for mutual benefit. She said that this isn't just a group, but it's a family. And once you're in, the doors of heaven and earth will open for you. A chill ran down my spine. I finally saw the truth. This wasn't about God's work. It was about control, greed, and power. But by then, they had already planted seeds of doubt in my heart. Could I really walk away? Or was I already too deep? When I returned to Reverend Michael after the meeting, I handed him the box and said, "No." His smile faded, replaced by a look of cold anger. I remember vividly he telling me that I will regret my actions. One thing that should be strange to you is that, after refusing Reverend Michael's offer and walking away from the gathering, I thought the nightmare was over. I assumed that saying no would be enough to shield me from their influence, but I couldn't have been more wrong. What followed was a season of relentless attacks, both physical and spiritual, that nearly broke me. The first signs were subtle: broken windows at my church, strange calls late at night where no one spoke on the other end, and shadows lingering outside my home. At first, I dismissed these as coincidences, but then the attacks escalated. One evening, as I left a midweek service, my car wouldn't start. When I opened the hood, I found the wires had been cut cleanly, as though with surgical precision. After about a week later, someone vandalized the church building, spray-painting obscenities and symbols I didn't recognize across the walls. Then came the fire. It was 2 a.m. when the smell of smoke jolted me awake. Flames licked at the wooden beams of my modest home. I barely managed to escape. The fire department called it arson, but the culprits were never caught. My congregation, already small, began to dwindle even further. Some members, terrified by the rumors swirling around me, chose to leave. One of my deacons said hesitantly, "I think you've angered the wrong people." He wasn't wrong. My brother, although the physical attacks were terrifying, but it was the spiritual warfare that nearly destroyed me. Night after night, I was tormented by vivid nightmares. In these dreams, I was back at the gathering, surrounded by the pastors, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of mockery. A voice, deep and malevolent, would echo, "You belong to me, Angela. You can't run." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. At first, I chalked it up to stress, but then the attacks bled into my waking hours. My prayers felt empty, as though they were bouncing off the walls. I would kneel for hours, pleading for God's presence, only to feel a suffocating void. The darkness seemed to seep into every corner of my life. Worst of all was the voice. It came at random moments, a chilling whisper in my ear, "You're alone. No one can save you. Just say yes, and it will all stop." I began to question my sanity. Was I imagining these things? Or was I truly under spiritual attack? My body grew weak. No doctor could explain the constant fatigue and sharp pains that left me bedridden for days. At some points too, I found a dead bird on my doorstep one morning, its wings outstretched as though in a mockery of flight. Later, a cat's mutilated body appeared outside the church. Honestly, I reached a breaking point. Physically, I was exhausted. Spiritually, I felt abandoned. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom, choosing instead to lie prostrate on the church floor, crying out to God. But the heavens remained silent. I began to question everything. Was my ministry worth the pain? Had I made a mistake in refusing the offer? If God was with me, why did he feel so far away? The devil's whispers grew louder. The most shocking aspect of all this was that, even those who once supported me began to waver. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said I was being punished for hidden sins. Others claimed I was dabbling in witchcraft myself. The accusations cut deep, but I understood they were afraid. One Sunday morning, only 3 people showed up for service. I stood at the pulpit, staring at the empty pews, and felt my resolve waver. "Lord," I whispered, tears streaming down my face, "if this is my end, give me the strength to endure." Yes, it went on for a while until when the attacks reached their peak, I experienced a moment of divine clarity. One night, as I lay on the church floor, a brilliant light filled the room. It wasn't the harsh glare of a bulb but a soft, warm radiance that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. I remember the voice like I am talking to you now. The voice said to me. I heard it vividly. "Be still, I am with you. This battle is not yours to fight." For the first time in months, I felt peace. What followed was a storm of repercussions. They tried to tarnish my reputation, spreading lies about me in the church community. My ministry shrank even further, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. One night, as I prayed, I felt God's presence in a way I never had before. It was as if he was saying, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." I rebuilt my ministry brick by brick, not with wealth or fame but with unwavering faith. God sent people who believed in the message, who supported the work we were doing. Now, I speak out against the very practices I once almost fell victim to. I tell my story not to shame others but to warn the innocent ones. The devil doesn't come with horns and a pitchfork. He comes dressed as everything you've ever wanted. So, to those listening, stay vigilant. Pray for discernment. And remember, no earthly reward is worth your soul. Thank you, my brother, for your time.
Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload. We do not do this to shame others but to warn the innocent ones that the devil doesn't come with horns and a pitchfork just like our sister said. He comes dressed as everything you've ever wanted. So, to those listening, stay vigilant. Pray for discernment. And remember, no earthly reward is worth your soul. Let your inner man or spirit walk anytime you meet any man who tells you he or she is a man of God. So that, you will be able to know the lies from the truth. You see, faith when placed in the wrong hands, can also be a weapon, one that can destroy you. Be vigilant. Not everyone who stands behind a pulpit is a servant of God. Not everyone who calls themselves a prophet or a pastor is truly anointed. Some of these so-called men of God are nothing more than wolves in sheep's clothing. I beg you, brothers and sisters, ask questions. Pray for discernment. Test the spirits, as the Bible says. Do not let anyone guilt you into giving beyond your means or participating in things that feel wrong in your spirit. Just like I always say, my heart aches for those who place their trust in men, believing they are receiving blessings from above when, in truth, they are entangled in a web of darkness. I hope that this will be a lesson etched in the hearts of those who dare to tread the fine line between faith and fanaticism. Stay safe. Stay vigilant. And always question the source of power before you place your trust in it. If you've ever been in a similar situation, or if you feel something's not right in your church or community, leave a comment below. Let's talk about it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories, because sometimes, the scariest things aren't the ones we see, they're the ones we don't.